When I found out and read about the case that I'm going to be talking about today, I was absolutely terrified that this could potentially happen to anybody. And it's been labelled one of the most gruesome and oldest puzzling murders in German history, as it still remains unsolved to this very day. 6 people were murdered in their home, and the killer has never been found. And I'm talking about the 1922 Hinterkaifeck Murders, and I am going to be very interested in knowing what you guys think about this case, and who do you think killed this family. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. If you don't know what's going on here, I am a horror artist and I like to draw what I talk about in the videos. So I basically took my love of true crime, scary facts, scary stories, aliens, UFO, conspiracies, all that type of creepy stuff, and then I combined it with my drawings that I like to do because I like to draw horrible, creepy stuff. Now, nothing in these videos is meant to be insensitive to the victims or the victims' families, but I will be accountable for my art. But if you are a sensitive person, I don't recommend continuing, and you've been warned. I don't want to hear any whinging. In a day or so, it's going to be the new year. I'm sort of classing this video as a whole new, fresh start to the new year. And what I'm going to be doing is sort of changing a little bit in the videos and just adding a little bit of something to each one. I do have a green screen coming. I haven't got it yet. I ordered it ages ago, but it hasn't turned up because of the Christmas break, basically. So once I get that, there will be a slight change to the videos. I'll just be adding some extra elements to it, basically like this. And I'm going to be trying to add more scary elements and trying to, make everything a little bit more terrifying and probably make the art a little bit more disturbing. So like I said, if you are sensitive, go somewhere else, please. And just hoping that YouTube won't be a little bitch about it and, start taking some of my videos down. With that being said, let's get on with the video and this chilling story of the Gruber family and the events that led to their demise. About 70 kilometers north of Munich, Germany, on a small Bavarian farmstead that was surrounded by forest in Weidhofen, Bavaria, Germany, lived the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, who was 63 years old, his wife Cecilia, which was 72, their daughter Victoria, 35, and Victoria's children, who was also called Cecilia, 7 years old, and Joseph, 2, and also their live-in maid, who was no relation to them. Some weird events started happening on the property roughly 6 months in 1921 prior to the attacks on the family, which forced their live-in maid to quit suddenly in September of 1921. Mainly at night, the maid would hear strange noises and footsteps coming from the attic, and this went on for quite a while, which made her believe that the house was haunted. So not being able to take it anymore and being terrified, she left. Now, they didn't get a maid straight away to replace her, so this put added stress on the family to pick up extra jobs around the home. In March 1922, Andreas found a newspaper from Munich on the property. Now, this doesn't sound odd, but no one at the farm had brought it, and Andreas certainly hadn't either. He thought that maybe the postman stuffed up, but no one in the nearby area had a subscription to the newspaper. 1 week before the family's demise, Andreas found footprints in the snow leading up to the house from the woods and also into the barn, but none leading away. And also the lock on the machine room had been broken as well. And he also complained to the neighbors that he heard footsteps in the attic, but when he went to check, there was nothing. Now, this is quite funny because he actually didn't believe the maid when she was actually talking about the footsteps in the attic. So, then he ended up hearing them. His house keys also went missing, and he refused an extra gun from the neighbour to protect him and his family. Unfortunately, the Grubers were not very liked or respected in the area due to the claim that Andreas had a sexual relationship with his daughter Victoria that may have resulted in Joseph being the product of their incest relationship. So Andreas went to jail for 1 year. This made the family reclusive, with only Victoria and her daughter Casilia ever seen in town. On the 31st of March 1922, they finally got a new maid after putting out feelers for one since the last one had left, and it was 44-year-old Maria Baumgartner, who was bought out by her sister. Unfortunately, the first day of Maria's starting would be D-Day for her and the family. Over the next 4 days, mail would pile up at the mailbox of the family, but smoke was reportedly coming from the home's chimney and the livestock was being fed. Neighbours Mikkel Plock and Simon Rayblender saw someone with a lantern walking around the Gruber farm at night, and also saw 2 strangers at the edge of the forest that turned away when they approached them. On the 3rd of April 1922, machine repairman Albert Hoffner turned up to fix the engine in the machine room and didn't see any family members of the Grubers, but noticed that their dog was barking inside and the barn was locked. Because the door of the machine room was open, he just went inside and spent 4 hours fixing the engine. Once finished, and on his way out to leave the property, he noticed that the barn was now open and the dog was now tied up outside. By now, the neighbours were getting worried, especially after running into Albert in town, which told one of the Gruber neighbours, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, about his eerie encounter out there. Lorenz took 2 of the other neighbours with him to see what was going on at the Grubers, as no one had seen them in town for days, and the younger Casilia, daughter of Victoria, had not been to school either, which was quite weird, and the family had not showed up for their church service either. Lorenz and 2 other neighbours visited the Gruber farm and entered the barn, where they found Andreas, his wife Casilia, Victoria and her younger daughter, young Casilia, stacked on top of each other, dead in the corner of the barn under hay. They found the house was locked, but they managed to get in because for some reason Lorenz had a key, and they found Joseph and the maid Maria dead in their bedrooms. Lorenz and the neighbours alerted the police of the murders and informed surrounding neighbours. No money, belongings or valuables were taken, so a robbery was ruled out. Lead investigator George Reingruber arrived on the scene, but by this time, so many people had been in and out of the property and moved the bodies, compromising evidence, but he came to the conclusion that the killer or killers had lured the 4 family members one by one into the barn and bludgeoned them to death with an axe or mattock to the head. But there was strangulation marks on Casilia, Andreas's wife, and Victoria. Also, the younger Casilia had clumps of her own hair in her hands, like she was ripping her hair out, which was later believed that she didn't die straight away and was suffering trauma from possibly watching her family die. It was also found that the killer or the killers lived in the home for the week after killing the family and their new maid, as the cows were milked and the rest of the livestock were fed, and even the dog was fed, and food was cooked in the kitchen. The police interviewed Maria's sister, and she said that the family was definitely alive on the 31st of March when she dropped her sister off. An interview with the mailman puts the murders possibly occurring on the night of the 31st of March, as the next day was Saturday and the mail hadn't been picked up from that day and then after. So many theories have been generated from this case, so let's go through some of the ones that I found on the vast corners of the internet. Now keep in mind that over 100 people were suspected of the murders. Neighbour Lorenz Schlittenbauer killed the family. Apparently, rumours were floating around that Victoria was having an affair with Lorenz and her 2-year-old son Joseph was his, and Lorenz apparently would refer to Joseph as quote-unquote, my boy. But what was his motive? No one really knows if he was the killer. Lorenz was the town's tour guide, and he was also said to be very calm when finding the bodies, and he had a key to get into the Gruber home. Were they the missing keys from Andreas? He also moved the bodies, but he confessed to police that he was Joseph's father and he was trying to find Joseph. Was Lorenz trying to get out of paying alimony to Victoria by killing them all? Apparently, they were even arguing about it as recent as the day of the murders. The family may have been killed by Victoria's supposed dead husband. Apparently, Victoria owned the farm and got ownership after her husband Carl Gabriel died in World War II. Some speculated that Carl knew Kazilia was actually Andreas's daughter, not his. Apparently, Carl's body was never found, leaving the case wide open for him to return and kill everyone, and that's why the killer knew how to run the farm afterwards. Carl was apparently sighted just before and after the murders in the small town. Also, the dogs and other animals weren't harmed, so this may have been Carl, as obviously he had no beef with the animals, it was only the human residents. The Thaler brothers may have done the murders. The former maid that left revealed that a man named Joseph Thaler visited the farm a year before the murders. Apparently him and his brother were known in the area for committing burglaries. Joseph apparently knocked on the maid's window one night wanting to rob the farm. The brothers had apparently been living in the barn 2 years prior, and Andreas had them get out by firing a gun at them. But they were ruled out eventually because no valuables were taken. Adolf and Anton Gump may have been the killers. Apparently Victoria was in a relationship with Adolf, and apparently Adolf and 3 others had killed 9 peasants in 1921, but around the time of the murders, Adolf could not be found. 30 years later in 1951, Adolf's sister made a deathbed confession that her brothers Adolf and Anton killed the Gruber family, but Adolf had died in 1944 and Anton was the only one brought into custody, but Anton pleaded innocence and without evidence he was released. A homeless person travelling through may have been the killer and may have found the Gruber farm appetizing and decided to take up residence without being detected for even up to a year before the murders. Maybe the man thought it might be something to take over and observed the family's chores, so he killed them, but then realised it might have been too risky to stay around as everyone knew everyone. He may have even studied them to be able to pick up the running of the farm once they were dealt with. The investigation has been reopened several times, with investigators saying the same thing. Whoever killed the Gruber family had an emotional motivation, it appears, as no one in the other farms were targeted, and it was just sheer hatred and passion driven, which leads to believe that it was someone close to the family. All leads went to dead ends over the years, and in 1955 the case was officially closed, and it appears that this 100-year-old case will never be solved. The Hinterkaifeck farm home was demolished in 1923, and a memorial stands in the property today to remember the Grubers and the maid Maria. They are also buried there on the property without their heads, apparently, as their heads were cut off in autopsy and sent away to be examined and given to clairvoyants to see if the heads would quote-unquote talk, but unsurprisingly, they didn't. So I will be very, very interested to know what you guys think about this case. Do you think that it was one of the incidents that I mentioned, or one of the people that I mentioned that had actually killed them, or do you think something else has happened, or have you found out some more information that may have been, may have led to the actual killer? I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I honestly do believe that this was definitely a passion crime, and you can tell that there was just absolute sheer hatred for this family, and the fact that it didn't happen to any other families and no other families in the neighborhood or other farms had any recorded or reported incidents of people walking around. I do think it is someone that they know. someone that they knew, and someone who knew how to run the farm. So hey, it even could have been the maid, the original maid, who just up and left and decided to come back and kill them all, and you know, probably try and take over the property, but realized it was just way too risky. I don't know. Who really knows? So yeah, like I said. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about this, because yeah, this is definitely a frightening case, and yeah, it's very, very disturbing, and yeah, it's crazy that this has happened, and yeah, if it happened in this day and age, probably the killer would have been found, but yeah, being 1922, yeah, unfortunately, just the technology wasn't there, and just no one was ever found, and it's been too long now. If anyone, the murderers would be dead now. So yeah, unfortunately, case closed, and may never know. It's sad. But the illustration that I decided to do for this video today is quite gruesome, and I know for a fact that it is, but I wanted to recreate a possible like scene, and just a thought and an inspiration from the crime that happened with the family members in the barn of this, you know, this representing this, the killer, which is like a monster, because he was, as far as I'm concerned, and I reckon it was definitely a he. So to have the strength to do what they did, I personally think that they would have had to have been a bloke to stack the bodies up, and you know, grown-ass people. Like a woman could probably do it, but would struggle. So yeah, I do think a man has done this. So I wanted to represent that killer by this monster, and he's dressed in like this overalls, like this farm sort of get up with this big scythe type tool, and he's just jammed it into the heads of all the victims. One victim on the ground is wearing a green shirt, and it, like, these things I don't try and represent like full on like human beings. They're kind of like altered a little bit, non-human type aspect. And yeah, so the one on the ground has unusually long arms and has a green shirt on, and the head's been taken off, and then there's this other thing laying on top of the haystack with its feet chopped off with holes in its head, and it's like naked. And then there's this other one behind the haystack, which you can just see the head sort of on its side, and then you can see the guts coming out from the one with the green shirt, and that sort of, you know, gory stuff. So if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. Dislike it, I couldn't care less, because it all goes towards the algorithm for other people to find me. And watch whatever is left of this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.